well, I don't know what I'm going to do now. And he's like, well, just move up here. Come live up here in Pennsylvania. So you pack up your whole house, move you and your son to Pennsylvania, right? Where you don't have any family or friends, because your son is doing so much better. And he's like being a good dad. And he's being a pretty decent partner. Like, again, I've always hated, I hate men. I take everything he says with a grain of salt. Like, I'm smarter than him. And yet still you're like, okay, everything is going good. Our son is happy. That's what matters most. So then, that was in December. So now,
a lot of men struggle with emotional awareness and communication in relationships. Some were not taught how to express their feelings or handle deep emotional connections, while others take their partners for granted or don't realize the effort needed in relationships. If a man isn't listening and he keeps acting immature, it's either he's not taking the relationship seriously or isn't capable of being a real partner. A relationship shouldn't feel like babysitting. Can a man be a good father and a bad husband?
You cannot be upset with your father over the crimes he committed against your mother. Oh, my father used to cheat on my mother and beat her. And so what? That's not your job. Step aside. Why are you trying to infantilize your mother? Or you think your mother did not know what she was doing when she stayed in that marriage? That's not your job. Step aside. As long as he was playing his fatherly duties to you and he was not failing at it, it's not your job to judge him.
Let me give you a little suggestion. This is coming from a good place. Drop the mic. Just, this content creating thing is not exactly for everybody, especially when it comes to, talking content or making sense. It's not for everybody. What you just said now, I'm a boy, I'm a man, but what you just said is, it's quite stupid. You get me? If you think abusive relationships do not affect the children, then there's something wrong with you. You went on to say, why did the woman stay in the relationship? She could have easily just left. It's not as easy as I think show you the get, especially this generation where they know the advice now say, make your own money. Many of our parents, many of the older generations, they depend solely on the man that is taking care of everything. They are housewife. So if they live with the children, who is going to take care of them? Most of them, they stay in the marriage and suffer because of you children. I am coming here to say,
the idea that a man can be a bad husband but still a good father is flawed. Many people believe that as long as the man is providing for his children, he is fulfilling his role. But parenting goes beyond financial support. A father's behavior towards the mother of his children plays a significant role in shaping how those children perceive love, respect, and relationships. Let's have a look at the comment section. Their mom refused to leave the marriage because of her children, and now the children are saying it's not their business if the father maltreats their mom. If any woman die, they won't put any of her children with her in the grave. That's what my mom always say, and it's true. Failing at it, bro, he is teaching his children that cheating is okay and also showing disrespecting your wife is okay. So how did he excel as a father? Good question. Fatherly duties isn't about providing alone. What happened to setting good example or inspiring you to be like him? Don't you know that your parents are supposed to be your first role model? True, a father's role isn't just about provision, isn't about just providing for the family. It also includes protection and nurturing. A father is supposed to lead by example. A mother's well-being affects her children. It affects her children emotionally and otherwise. Children learn from what they see, not just what they're being told. My dad was a good father and not a good husband, and all that got me traumatized. That's why I'm not in good communication with him till date after my mom died. I don't think I can ever forgive him. I dated someone who came from an abusive family, and I regret ever not ending our first conversation with a snob. Bro, it will show. You can't hide it. I saw my father abuse my mom, and as the first son, I was protecting my young one from the flying stick. week. It traumatized me, and I swore I would one day confront my dad when I'm old, but unfortunately, I lost my dad. He took his last breath on my hands. And I miss him because he was a great dad in terms of responsibility, but I never supported him abusing my mom, and we never in another life. I wished I stood up for my mom. The truth here is this: you can't separate being a good father from being a good partner. A man who truly loves his children will also respect and care for their mother, because that man understands that a healthy family starts with a strong and respectful partnership. Someone once said, don't give birth for an abusive person, because even if you leave the man and go above and beyond for the children, those children, 9 out of 10, will grow up and won't notice you did anything. Reason why we always say don't stay in any toxic relationship because of your children, because they will tell you they did not ask you to do that. My dad will always say the best way a father can show his love for his children is to treat their mother right. Am I supposed to forget the fact that my father chased my mother with hammer in front of me and my siblings? Am I supposed to forget the fact that he has 3 children that we know outside of his marriage?
I'm not gonna lie, it was the worst thing ever growing up and realizing that men are losers, bro. And not in the way that like they don't have money or like cars or houses. It's like the way they think, the way they speak to women, the way they treat women, the way they mistreat women actually. And just like their view of the world and their mindset is just like so off. Like, I don't know, like I feel like as a young child, as a young girl, we're raised to think that men are just so strong and the saviors and like just supposed to like hold us up, but they can't even hold themselves up. Matter of fact, they expect us to do it. No, I'm through. I'm cool on it. Bye.
The conditioning and grooming is heavy. Most men can't survive without women. They need us to fix them, to fix their lives. They see us as the slaves they need to own that will fix their lives. Let's have a look at the comment section. Seriously, whenever I'm having conversations with some of them and I hear how they think, I'm like, are these the so-called leaders? No wonder the world is a mess. I overheard young men speaking about a woman who had just left their table. It was horrifying and eye-opening, and I was in 9th grade when this happened. I've always thought it was funny as kids. We all went through a phase of boys having cooties or being mean, and we stayed away from them. Then we got gaslit into being nice to them. Then when we got older or grew up, we realized that we were right all along. Movies, romance books, those are targeted towards young girls to make us think the right one is somewhere out there for us. The grooming and conditioning starts from a very young age. Boys being mean to girls, boys having poor hygiene from a very young age says a lot. Boys always wanting to have sex with girls and sexualizing young girls at a very young age also says a lot. I understand we have the puberty stage. Believe me, that has less effect compared to the grooming and conditioning. All they do is take and feel entitled to doing so. They're naturally training. The older I get, the more I understand why polygamy is a thing. Not all men are worthy of a wife and children. Being raised to believe that they were protectors and not the danger itself is so crazy. Genuinely hope that the next generation teaches their daughters better. We are just objects and we are nothing more to them. My ex told me women with high body counts are less than I said. What's a high body count? He said it depends on what the man said. Just imagine. It's a man's world, they say. It's a man's world we live in. They created a system to benefit them. So they see us as a tool, as an object. A tool for sex, a tool to fix their life, a tool to clean up after them. They mostly don't see us as humans, honestly. They perceive women as slaves. They don't like boundaries you have, and nowadays too feminine for me, especially when tables are turned, when we don't care anymore. Now you're the bad guy, kills me. We even do the independent thing better. Like, I learned I can cook, pay bills, and hold down a house better than a man. I'm sick, and they don't even come with emotional intelligence either. I remember the sinking disappointment when my first boyfriend didn't act right, but I had hope with the next one, which was silly of me. He was worse, and so forth. I thought I was making a bad decision. As a mom with 2 teenage sons, this is my fear. I am continuously having conversations with them about relationships, expectations, and emotional availability. I want them to be supportive partners. Why do men's ego come before every morale they have? Men with big egos often prioritize pride over doing what is right. They do so because they see admitting fault or showing vulnerability as weakness. This explains why some men don't like to be accountable. The society has conditioned a lot of men to believe they always have to be strong and in control. And this makes it so hard for men to own up to mistakes they make and even listen in relationships. Let's have a look at this video of a man that abuses his wife and his daughter. That's a sad reality. Abusers are beasts. They are monsters. There is no excuse for a man to abuse a woman, but there are reasons why some of them behave that way. Men who abuse women are deeply insecure, emotionally immature, or were raised in environments where abuse was normalized. Those men feel the need to always dominate and control because they see power as the only way for them to maintain their self-worth. They use anger or violence to mask their weaknesses or make themselves feel superior. In relationships and marriages, abusive men always lash out when they feel powerless, jealous, or unworthy. Having children for an abusive man might be detrimental because sometimes they perceive their children to be their competitors. They see their children to be competing for the woman's attention with them. And they also see the children as an extension of their control over their wife or their woman. An abusive man is a deeply broken man who was never taught how to love in a healthy way. It is tragic. It is unacceptable. I would always say, run for your life if you're in a relationship with an abusive man. They don't get better. They always refuse to work on themselves. Instead of them working through issues, they might get defensive, shut down, or act out in immature ways. Let's have a look at the comment section. This happened to my junior sister just a year after marriage. The husband started beating her. My dad told her to pack her clothes and carry her baby back. They returned the bride price to the guy, which is the right thing to do. She's lucky she has a good family. Most families out there are not supportive. They will kick against the woman leaving the husband's house. This is what I'm passing through right now. You all think it's easy to leave just like that. Who no go? No. It means if you're not in that position, you will not understand. We always want to leave, but there's always a force pulling us back. And if we finally leave, we're never looking back. I pray we all get the strength to leave. Lots of love, babes. Many abusive relationships create trauma bond, where the victim becomes emotionally attached to the abuser despite the harm. The cycle of abuse where the abuser hurts the victim, apologizes to the victim, and promises to change, and then repeats the abuse. It can make it incredibly hard for the victim to leave. Some women also stay back because of fear, financial independence, cultural pressure, and even love, believing that the man will change. It's painful to see women defend men that are hurting them, especially when you know those women deserve better. Please, my fiance beats me and still apologizes. A very manipulative person. Now he wants to come and see my family. Please, what do I do? Is this even supposed to be a question? I think she's dealing with trauma bond. Is this supposed to be a question? You're lucky that you're not even married to this person yet, and you're thinking about getting married to the person. Is obviously a big problem. Here's a response. One thing I came to realize is you can't really advise someone who is in love. You already know what to do. The person is right. She already knows what to do. And you're just in denial because you don't want to do it. That's the truth.
Finger down if almost 12 years ago you had a kid with a guy and you guys got married and it was an awful relationship, and you both had mental health issues, undiagnosed, unmedicated, and you were an alcoholic but you didn't know it at the time, so obviously the relationship was toxic, and you divorced. So then you moved back to Tennessee with your son, and your son would visit him a couple times a year, and everything was like pretty decent. He always paid child support on time. You still did You didn't like him because you didn't think he was that good of a father, but for the most part you kind of got along, but really there was just periods of time where you didn't speak at all because, again, you didn't think he was doing the best he could. Anyway, he winds up getting remarried, has a couple more kids. At the end of last year, his other baby mama leaves him suddenly to you because you're not in their business and you don't know what goes on in their lives. He unblocks you because he had you blocked and immediately starts telling you all of this information about things that she said about you and whatnot. And you already know he's like kind of a liar, but you're like, you know what? Like, okay, whatever. Like, you didn't really like her anyway because of some shit that transpired that wasn't even important. Anyway, so you kind of believe him, but you kind of don't. And then he decides he wants to come visit your son, and you're like all for it because your son is having like mental health issues because his dad isn't in his life as much as he should be, and he's going to therapy once a week. And so you're like, yeah, of course, like anything I can do to help in that relationship. He comes and visits you and your son in Tennessee, and everything's cool. And then he's there for a couple days and you start feeling really guilty because everything seems normal, and you're like, well, maybe we should try to work this out, like even not romantically, like even just as co-parents for our son. Like, this would be a smart decision. We could, he could stay with us until he found somewhere to live, yada yada yada. And he's like, you know what, yeah, like whatever. But eventually, like, one thing leads to another and you guys wind up hooking up. Okay. And so then you're like full back on, but you're hesitant too because you're like, you just got out of a marriage, like you're not even legally divorced yet. But he like reassures you like, oh no, I'm sick. Anyway, reassures you, oh no, it's totally fine. Like, things are over between us, me and her, long before she left, yada yada yada. And you're like, okay, whatever. So everything's kind of going cool, and then your house winds up selling in Tennessee. So you're like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm gonna do now. And he's like, well, just move up here. Come live up here in Pennsylvania. So you pack up your whole house, move you and your son to Pennsylvania, right? Where you don't have any family or friends, because your son is doing so much better and he's like being a good dad. And he's being a pretty decent partner. Like, again, I've always hated, I hate men. I take everything he says with a grain of salt. Like, I'm smarter than him, and yet still you're like, okay, everything is going good. Our son is happy. That's what matters most. So then, that was in December. So now it's the beginning of fucking March. And this whole time he has been in like a little custody, he's going through a divorce. They're doing custody stuff, divorce, whatever. And he mentions a few times that he wants to move to Tennessee. And you're like, what about your other two boys? Like, they live in Pennsylvania. You can't just do that to them. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. And you tell him, like, I'm not going to be with a man that abandoned his kids. That's dusty, gross behavior. I lived it. I had a dad that was absent. I saw what it did to our son when you weren't there. I won't co-sign that behavior. And he seems all for it, right? Like, he's like, yeah, like, I don't know why she won't let me be around the kids. She's scared of him. And like, he's got some anger issues, like whatever. But like, I don't really think anything of it because like, I've seen it. I beat his ass before. Okay, I beat his ass the first time we were together over a decade ago. Okay, so it's like, yeah, I've seen how he acts, but it ain't nothing that, can't handle. But then also he starts working on his mental health and he changes his medication and he starts doing what you think is better, and everything's going pretty good. You think everything is going pretty good. So Friday night, you and him and your son, y'all go shopping, and me personally spend hundreds of dollars buying all kinds of for his other two kids because he's supposed to be able to visit them supervised. His dad has to be there. The next morning, yesterday morning, okay? And hold on. Okay, so you spend so much money, because, did I mention he also lost his job like a month ago randomly? But you spend all of that money on these kids that you've never even buy them all kinds of things that you think they'd like to eat. You buy a baby gate, safety shit for the doors. You buy all kinds of little toys. And then the next morning, you go to sleep that night. You think everything's pretty cool. You're a little bit stressed out about the situation because you've never met these kids and, you don't know how everything's going to go. And also, they're two toddlers. You have a 12-year-old, that's taking on a lot of extra responsibility. And they both are on the spectrum. Nervous because you also, want these kids to like you. And then, next thing you know, he has your number blocked and your son's number blocked. And hours have passed. And your son is trying to get hold of him, and he can't. Turns out that, so he blocked your son, he blocked you. Finally, his dad, who went with him to get the kids, answers and tells your son that he's in the hospital because he had a psychotic break. And you're confused because you're like, how could he have had a psychotic break? Everything's going pretty normal in our lives. But then the cops show up at your house and you're like, that's weird. I don't know. And why would the cops show up here? Oh, they're doing a welfare check on your son. You're like, that's confusing. And anyway, so your son talks to them and you're like, meanwhile, we don't know where dad is. What's going on with him? And then his dad, your ex-father-in-law, comes over and just explains to you that everything is probably going to be okay. Don't give up on him. He just had a little bit of a psychotic break. He's in the psych ward. He's on a, 72-hour hold because the stress of life just got to him too much. And you're like, okay, yeah, sure. You know what? Been here before. We can do it again. And, it kind of calms you down. But then the wife, the other baby mama, the one that he's currently in divorce proceedings with, texts you today and says, hey, Tasha, I know that you probably don't want to hear from me or you don't want to talk to me, but I just think you and I need to touch base because I'm hearing one thing and I don't know what you're being told. And I'm confused, right? Because I'm what do you mean? What she's being told? Apparently, what she was being told is that I was controlling his life and he was trying to escape me and that I was psychotic and that I held a gun to his head on Thanksgiving of this past year when we were at my brother's house. I don't even have a handgun to hold to his head. I'm just saying all kinds of stuff about me, which she saw through and immediately was like, not sending my kids with you, calling the cops. Anyway, so all that happens and there's a whole lot more. And also, you're pregnant. Yeah. Could that happen to anyone else, please? So now you're pregnant with a psychopath's baby for the second time. And now you have to figure out what to do. And now everything that you've been told is a lie and you're just trying to weed through all of the lies and figure out what the to do.
That is a lot. Let's see what people are saying in the comment section. I had a court mediator tell me trying to get back with a toxic ex is like taking your and then trying to shove that back your ass. I listened and I never looked back. Run, girl. Yes, she needs to run. But how far can she run? Where is she running to? She has a second child for him coming up. I'm so sorry. Become best friends with the other baby mama and raise those babies as siblings that never have to see that dude again. This is not a bad advice, if you ask me. Ma'am, you only get to be a victim once. After that, you are a volunteer. I guess that might be the case here, but we should not be quick to judge because we don't know exactly what made her accept that man back. I think maybe she wanted the family unit and she was being hopeful the man was going to change and do differently. Girl, you're not a victim here. Your son is. You made poor choices and now you need to take accountability and get yourself together to mend your son's broken heart. You helped cause. This is on you. You knew all the bad. You've seen what he did to your son and you went back to it. You were irresponsible and your child deserves better parents. That's harsh, but that's the truth. The comments are terrible. She was just trying to give her son a chance of family. I thought so because she wants the family unit. Stop judging. You're not in her shoes. She wanted the best for her son and her son's well-being. I understand this point of view, but that wasn't a right move. So you watched him hurt and neglect your son for years and you still gave him another chance and are shocked he's repeated the same behavior he's always done to multiple women. Got it. If you'd love to watch more videos like this, click this video to watch men who express disdain for their partner yet continue to date them. And I will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.